Hey guys, it's Jay, here with another review video. Before the review begins, I'd like to ask if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and share it with others. Without further ado, on to the vid. The episode begins with a bat peering out of a hole. It then hisses out into the distance. Paws suddenly scrape and claw inside the hole, though it soon stops, and the wolf lowers its mouth over the hole, growling into it. It then peers its eyes into the crevice. The bat hisses again, but the wolf's whole face can be seen growling back. We then transition to Vayal standing and looking at the burns on his clothing. He questions if the heat of Shay's cheese somehow made it into the Inturium dome. He adds that they should be isolated, and wonders if the dome is still connected to the void, and if it is, Shay can still. Lewis then cuts him off and tells him to slow his thoughts, as he can feel the anxiety in his chi. He says the sun is almost upon them and Vayal still hasn't dealt with him, and adds that Vayal has lost focus and questions if he is that terrified of death. We then shift to the past as a man reads from the Bible, saying, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and love and of a sound mind." The girl with red hair then asks what that means. He responds with bravery, as knowing God is on their side they should be bold like lions, and that nothing should frighten them. He then asks the girl if there is anything she is scared of. She responds with Mistress Mary when she's hungry, but instead she'll say dogs, the big scary ones. She then turns and asks a younger Vayal if he is scared of anything, but bets he isn't, and Vayal responds with, "Death. Humans have everything. But we Kimyos can take it all if we really wanted to. But Papa says that's wrong. This is why we wait. But it would be a shame to die before seeing how much I can take from them if I tried." We then go back to the present as Vayal turns his sword into a whip. He then says Lewis is right, as he cannot die, and if he does, who will be the one to drag mankind to their knees? Lewis puts his fingers together and tells him to prove it. Vayal whips his sword at Lewis and says he enjoyed his company. And as it gets close, an ash hand blocks it. An ash skull forms, held up by hands that is connected to a torso with multiple arms. Vayal is alert, and as Lewis raises his arm, so does the ash body. It slams its fist down, breaking the ground, but Vayal swings his blade around, severing the ash. Lewis punches with his opposite arm, making the right arm punch as well. The Vayal slashes and severs the arms and sends his blade at Lewis. It inches closer, but Lewis catches it in between his hands. He then has the ash body slam onto Vayal. Vayal is then seen soaring back, with blood hands protecting him. He then turns around and sees an ash hydra behind him, ready to devour. However, he begins to cut through it as his hands protect him. We then switch to outside the Inturium dome, with Shay standing in the rain holding Vinter. Mahalalel tells him to take a knee. He says if Lewis is engaged within the Inturium dome, there is nothing they can do but wait and pray, and he adds to be ready for the moment the dome drops, for he must move quickly, but for now, sit. He then says, "When your heart is unstable, every Kimyo soul around will feel it. Take hold of yourself, formulate your plan. If the shadow truly resides within there, you must face him a second time. As for now, come to me. There is something I must show you." Shay opens his eye inside Ilios' mindscape and stands up, while Ilios says, "A war is about to begin. I can feel his darkness encroaching upon us by the minute. My brother is moments away from making his grandest play." Shay says Ilios' brother can wait, as his time will come, and he adds that he wants the head of the bat, as he is far too close to 3 of his packmates. He then asks if Ilios can break through the Inturium wall and get him inside. Mahalalel says, "No, I've been thinking of ways, but I do not believe I can. It is in another void altogether. However, I agree. The Blood Monarch must be dealt with swift ferocity. As long as he evades death, he will continue to aid my brother's return and his plans. We cannot enter the dome. We can only pray for those inside. Your friend, the one standing against him. I hope you've made peace with him. I can only prepare you for the pivotal moments that will shape your future. First, you must see about your own heart." A black pillar is seen past the beginning of the Omega symbol. Shay asks if it is Thanatos, but Mahalalel responds with, "No, I've blocked his view since the moment he returned. This is something different. As I reside in your body, I guard your heart. Anything that attempts to reach it will appear before me. A pillar of shadow seems to be watching. It wants to know where your heart truly lies." Shay then begins to speak, saying, "This place is light. You cannot hide within your shadows here. You've come to see and you've seen. There are no corners for secrets to dwell here, and that goes for you as well. Remove your veil and show who you truly are. Show me your face, Zahara." Now onto the highlights. First, I want to take a quick look at the intro scene. Now, this scene depicts a bat in a small space and a wolf trying to reach it. The bat is clearly supposed to be Vayal, and the wolf is supposed to be Shay. The small space represents the Inturium dome. The wolf tries to reach what's inside, but can't actually get the bat. the same way Shay's chi can reach inside the dome, but he himself can't. Now, I'm not sure if the presence of the wolf's nose is supposed to emulate Shay's chi scent, since it doesn't look like it's sniffing, but regardless, the shot of its eye looking into the hole and confirming the bat is there parallels Shay smelling Veil's scent and chi, confirming he was where they are. I really like this addition to the story as it's a way to tell it through a different lens, which is one that perfectly reflects the characters and the situation. Moving on, let's look at Veil and some of the hints of his backstory. First, the man we see reading to the children is the same character Mahalalel shows Veil in episode 100. The events of the flashback would happen before the version Mahalalel shows, as the one we see in this episode seemingly doesn't have the same scar on the right side of his face like the one in episode 100 does. He would also naturally be younger or more youthful in this episode, as he isn't wearing glasses, which would be a sign his age hasn't affected his eyes yet. This priest character also seems like a father to the children, with Veil distinctly calling him Papa. This could show how Veil and Shay are more alike than one would have guessed, as they were both raised by men who are believers and both seem to diverge from their father's teachings. But there is still a clear difference in the two, as while Leo's absence has impacted Shay in a way to where his teachings are closer to the back of his mind than at the forefront, Veil clearly doesn't fully agree with his father's sentiment. Now, Veil seems to imply he and the others are all Kimyos, which would make sense for two reasons. The first is that Veil says they must wait, which could mean they are currently hiding, so they can wait for a proper opportunity to leave wherever they are. The hiding aspect would coincide with this being far in the past, as Kane's caretaker before being executed tells him they must hide as to not fright humans into attacking Kimyos, which means that in the past it was common for Kimyos to be hidden amongst humans. The second reason I think they are all Kimyos is because the girl, Lilia, shares the same hair and eye color as Jamie Altham, Leo's mentor. Since they do share these distinct features, and no other character has been shown to have them, I see it as very likely she is Jamie's ancestor, and if so, she may have been the one to have his talent originally, potentially wielding a stronger version of it. Now, Veil expresses a sentiment of wanting to take from humans, and this shows how he has always disliked humans, and why he would end up serving Thanatos. Moving on to the more metaphorical aspect of the flashback, the verse their father is reading is 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. This verse is meant to highlight that fear does not come from God, and that one should not feel it when they are reminded of God's presence in them. This is why the priest says, knowing God is on our side, we should be bold like lions, and that nothing should frighten us. Now, Veil fears death, as he says so himself, and while he is a full-grown adult who lived for at least 600 years, he still carries this fear. We see the fear in his eyes when Bjorn is going to hit him with Michelgar, as well as at the end of episode 138 when Ilios' chi touches him. There are also statements from Lewis throughout the fight that suggest Veil has remnants of fear. The priest's words also play into Veil, as the only time he is truly bold and without fear is when he has access to his blood sacrifice technique, as with it he feels confident enough to face Leo and Bjorn, but without it he's weaker and only feels confident enough to face a weakened Azam. Now let's take a look at the things associated with Shay. First, Mahalalel says when Shay's heart is unstable, every Kimyo soul around him will feel it. This relates to Shay's Thanatos chi, as in episode 132, Reed tells us that when Shay released his chi, it flowed through the void, touching every Kimyo on Earth. He then later says the calm whisper of wrath is the chi of Shay, resting faintly on all of them. Mahalalel's statement reinforces that the chi of the ether connects all Kimyo, and since Shay's identity resides on that chi, if he expresses how he feels in an uncontrolled manner, the Kimyos around him will feel it due to their innate connection to the ether. Now, Brent on one of his IG stories has compared Shay's turn to Ronin to that of Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side, and though I don't know a lot about Star Wars, if it is true that Anakin's turn to the dark side could be sensed by others, this could be Brent's way of emulating that, and during the hiatus, Brent posted a picture announcing it, with it saying the Ronin arc has begun. This should mean that from this point on, we will actively see Shay start to transition into his future persona of Ronin, and due to the parallels of Anakin, as well as the other Kimyos being able to feel Shay's chi if it is unstable, we may very well see characters close to him in proximity start to feel this very shift as well. Next, Mahalalel tells Shay that he can feel Thanatos' darkness encroaching upon them, and that he is moments away from making his grandest play. Now, the actual definition of encroach kinda led me to believe this isn't simply a physical action, as I initially thought this could mean Thanatos is on his way to Trinidad, but I now think it's more implied this is a metaphorical encroach, and Mahalalel may have inadvertently sensed his brother's acquisition of the Merlin Stone. The question really is, what would the grandest play be? There aren't many things we could use to guess what it might actually look like, but I think the fact Ilios mentions war and Eric when bringing up the Merlin Stone says a past Thanatos user hid his entire company within a dimension could mean Thanatos will bring his soldiers to Trinidad or wherever using the Northern Stone, leading to another large-scale conflict like that of the Greenland War. If he does take them to Trinidad, that conflict could be the reason part of Spain looks the way it does in the year 2029. Next, Shay and Mahalalo agree that Veal must be dealt with. For as long as he evades death, he will continue to aid Thanatos' return and his plans. Veal is a genuine issue for the good guys in the verse. As it's implied, he's aided Thanatos multiple times before, and he himself is the one to imply this, as he says in episode 112 that he has followed him, watched him die, and searched for him after every new birth. Veal literally helps establish the next Thanatos vessel with all of his acquired resources, even helping him fast-track his current growth in Able through the bombing of the stadium, as well as his devouring of the soldiers. However, if Veal wasn't around, the next Thanatos user would have to start from the ground up, as he would no longer have anyone that could help him establish himself faster, as well as keep him secluded and in safe locations. So we must ask, is this where Veal dies? I think narratively it makes the most sense for him to die at this point. The initial wolf and bat metaphor shows how Veal is cornered by Shay, and that Shay will not let him escape. I also feel Veal dying gives Thanatos' presence in the story more priority, as he is the origin point of the ideological desire to destroy most of humanity, only leave strong Kinyos around. Veal dying at this time could be the inverse of what Leo dying means to the wolf pack. Leo died and his cubs still carry on his flames, as mentioned by Minamoto in episode 77, with him literally saying Leo's blue flames reside in each of them, and as the world creates more problems, Leo expects them to solve them. This comment relates to what Aldrich tells Reed in episode 127, saying the fight has passed them and moved on to their sons. So Leo's death represents that in a literal sense, especially when taking into account the first season and Leo's transfer of Ilios to Shay, as well as the Cubs' desire for revenge against Rokash, an opponent Leo fought first. However, inversely, Veal's death here could represent a sort of giving back of the ideology to Thanatos. If Leo's death represents the passing on of responsibility to the next generation, then Veal's death represents the passing on of responsibility to the past generation. So instead of fully trusting in the followers he's developed to ensure the world he wants comes to fruition, he ultimately only trusts his master to see that through, a recurring figure from an older time. A statement from Lewis also seems to add on to this sentiment. Moving on, Mahalalo clearly implies he believes Lewis will die against Veal, and he adds that he can only prepare Shay for it in other pivotal moments that will shape his future. There's no way of knowing what the other pivotal moments will be, however Lewis's death will be one of those moments. Brent did say in the past that Veal does something that breaks Shay, and I mentioned the same thing in my episode 117 review in relation to it being about Shay's brother. However, I now feel that thing will be Lewis's death at Veal's hands. Shay already reacts very negatively when people close to him die, and badly wants to kill Veal when he confirms he's responsible for Mei and Sabito's death. So the death of one of his siblings by the same man, while he's close but not able to stop it from happening, would naturally send him over the edge. The other pivotal moments might tie into Thanatos' grand play, but again, we won't know until we see more things that could relate to it. A quick thing I want to mention is that Ilios says he blocked Thanatos' view the moment he returned, which is something I mentioned in my trailer breakdown, and the reason I thought this was the case back then was due to it making more sense for Shay to ask Ilios to cast Thanatos out of their mind than a conjured version of him still existing in it. This also means that Thanatos will never have any influence on how Shay decides to do things in the future, and directly counters Kofi's thought of Thanatos' mind potentially being the reason for Shay destroying the moon that he says in episode 128. Another quick thing I want to look at is Shay saying there are no corners for secrets to dwell there. This should connect to how Ilios being inside Shay and being the one that guards his heart causes all intentions from Shay to be clear to Ilios. This is directly backed up from when Shay implies Ilios can see his heart's intent in the season 2 finale. This would mean that when Ilios asks Shay to spare Leith, it's more of a plea than an unknown request, as he would already know what Shay intended to do to him. Now, let's look deeper into Ilios guarding Shay's heart, which is a very important concept and relates to why Ilios is like Shay's guiding light. Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23 reads, "Above all else, guard your heart, for all you do flows from it." This verse tells us to be mindful of the things we allow into our psyche, as our actions will come directly from the things we allow in. And this is why Ilios is Shay's guiding light, as he sees the things that happen to and around Shay, and how those things affect him directly translate to what he does moving forward. Ilios tries to steer Shay in such a way that the negative things he sees doesn't affect him to the point it would lead him to do something negative as well, which adds to why he will prepare Shay for the pivotal moments that will shape his future, as the things that occur will affect Shay's heart and determine how he operates from here on. This isn't just a life experience thing, as the episode makes it a physical thing as well, so anything that literally tries to reach Shay's heart will appear before him, and this is why Zahara showed up in their mind, as she originally tried to own Shay, twisting and bending his heart to her will, as seen in episode 125. But of course, this does not occur, with her choosing to side with Shay instead. But as Mahalalel states in this episode, she still wants to know where Shay's heart truly lies, and thus, like before, wants to reach it. Zahara wanting to know where Shay's heart lies could add to what I said about her potentially being able to go where she desires, as well as choose who wields her in my episode 126 review, as if Shay were to not align with her views, she could simply leave and find a better wielder. Now, due to Zahara appearing in Shay's mind, I also thought it may be possible for Vinter to have also shown up in Shay's mind as well, and this would lead to him knowing Vinter is male, as he refers to him as such in episode 127. However, Shay's initial confusion could lead this to not being the case at all. If Shay did meet Vinter in his mind, it's possible it was a more peaceful interaction, and since Vinter relates to ice, he may have shown up with ice trailing under his steps instead of in an unknown pillar of it. A peaceful meeting also makes sense since Bjorn told Vinter to stay by Shay's side until his death, so Vinter might have wanted to formally greet the Kimyo his former wielder told him to stand by. However, if Shay did not meet Vinter, it's still very possible for him and other Kimyos with inner worlds like the Great Four to speak with things attempting to invade their hearts, or with talent weapons of the same sentience as Zahara. To end things off, I want to say I really enjoyed Mahalalel's mentions of praying, as it not only helps highlight Brent's faith being in the story in a slightly different aspect, but those who read it can also understand that prayer can be used as a means to request God to safeguard others. Something that might be interesting is that Lilia mentions she's afraid of big dogs, which feels very intentional considering who she talks to afterwards. So she's afraid of big dogs, aka wolves, the same way the bat in the metaphor is afraid of the wolf that's after it. Next, I'm wondering why Zahara was on a giant weapon, and why the weapon doesn't look like the Naginata her talent resides in. And lastly, for the comment of the week, I would like to put a spotlight on Killer B789, aka the Philosophy. He wrote, "Does the night fear the coming of the sun, or the sun fear its own setting as night takes hold? This is life and death, light and shadow, the same yet different. To cherish one is to fear the other. Without balance of the two in one's heart, all that remains is the endless fight to prevent the other and be consumed by one in the process." This is a great quote, as many of its parts apply to Shay and Vayal. The first sentence applies to Vayal's fear of Shay, and can also apply to Shay who fears losing those close to him to Vayal. The light and shadow is literally Shay who uses the sun fire talent and creates light, and Vayal is referred to as the shadow multiple times. And the same yet different relates to how I mentioned Vayal and Shay are more similar than one would expect. And lastly, part of the last sentence could relate to the conflict Shay and Vayal are in, as they try to defeat the other, resulting in their ideal world, while others around them, whether that be allies or enemies, die during the conflict. But anyway, that's the video, guys. Let me know what your favorite part of the chapter was in the comments below, as well as how you feel about the things I mentioned in the highlight section. Don't forget to read the actual episode for yourself, and be sure to like it as well, and I will see y'all in the next one.